Hi everyone, welcome back to class. We are here in lecture week 13, which is amazing. So it's great to see everyone back, of course. And let me quickly just go through our last few weeks so you have an idea of what we're going to do to wrap up the course. This week, which is the week of April 8th through the 14th, today's the 11th, I've posted your assignment, which of course is to watch this lecture 12, and then read chapter 6 and 7 and Freeman, and Selleck's Day by Day, chapter 4. You won't have text questions. Instead, you'll just do short responses. And there's short responses for each one of those chapters. If you open up here, you can get the short responses. They're right here. What do I have? 8. 3 for chapter 6, 3 for chapter 7, and 2 for chapter 4 from Selleck. I would say about a paragraph for each one. Write those up and you will submit them right in the same place. So you'll get them here and you'll submit them. You'll have 2 weeks. Next week, of course, begins Holy Week for us. Sunday's Palm Sunday. And we welcome Jesus back from the desert. His 40 days with palms. And of course, then we go into Holy Week. For those of you that recognize Holy Week, we begin with the washing of the feet. We have a Holy Thursday with the Last Supper. Of course, Good Friday, we have the Stations of the Cross and the Crucifixion of Christ. And Saturday, Holy Saturday. And of course, Sunday, the Resurrection and the beautiful celebration when Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb and finds the stone is rolled away and Jesus is no longer there. So it's a great, wonderful week for us as Christians. So on next week, we will not have class. Therefore, the assignment is here. It's posted. It will not be due until you get back on the week of April 22nd. As of that week, you'll have just one last chapter by Selleck, Day by Day, chapters 5 and 6, but she's short, it's easy. And I'll give you text responses too for that. I haven't posted them, but just so you know, you can knock out that reading since you'll have Easter off. I also did post your final exam project. It's here on the last class, which will be due May 7th. That's the last week of classes. The final project here, you get the final project here, you submit it here. I do want to open it. What it is, it's on project-based learning. Here's the whole assignment. And it'll talk a lot about project-based learning, and then it'll give you the assignment. Let me get you back here. Before you look at it, what I want to tell you is basically it'll talk all about project-based learning, which you should have actually have learned about in 195. And we touched briefly on it in 185 for those of you that can remember that far back. But in project-based learning, what we're doing is we're giving our students, it's this idea of when we talked about the overarching question or that theme. You're giving students a question or a theme and they're creating a project around that. And often, depending on the proficiency level, when you begin with project-based learning, you talk to the students about their interests and what they might be interested in learning about. And the example I think in the assignment is for younger students. It's the idea of the butterfly, and you talk about the life cycle and with what type of animal would they be interested in talking about the life cycle. There's a lot of interest in life cycles, and usually it's the butterfly, and you begin with Eric Carle's book. And it's a whole project based on learning about content-based learning. You learn about the language, you learn discourses, oral discourse, writing discourse. And at the same time, you're learning content, and it's hands-on, it's student-centered. You can introduce vocabulary, grammar, and it usually extends for a unit. A unit is generally 10 lessons between 2 and 3 weeks. So what I want you to do is think about a project-based learning activity for an ESL class. So you'll first read about project-based learning, and then you'll create, there's just 2 parts for this project. You have to create the overview. Let me pull that up, which is right here. Let's see if I can get that bigger. And you'll talk a little bit about the project overview, what it entails, the driving questions, what type of assessment you'll have. It's 2 pages here. And you might want to do this first so you can really start thinking about what project you'd like to do with your students. And then you have to do the unit lesson plan. The unit lesson plan is 10 lessons, but don't panic. It's not 10 lesson plans. You're planning for 10 lessons. So you have central focus, critical content skills, and then down here for day 1, what's the learning target, daily plan, and you only really just need a sentence for each one of these 10 days. So it's not too much work. You want about a sentence describing what you'll do on each of those 10 days, but really more of the information goes in these first 2 pages for the unit lesson plan. It's a standard template, and let's see, my students who are already teachers out in the field, Jennifer, this is for you. If your school district already has a unit plan template, you may use that one. You don't have to use ours. Anyone who's a Roberts Wesleyan undergrad has to use ours. Anyone who's a postgrad, you can use the template that your district may already have in place. So the final exam project, you'll have your project-based learning overview, these 2 pages, and then you will submit as well the unit plan template. That is not due until May 7th. Now today's August 11th, so you have a long time. You can start working on it because the Dropbox is there. If you want to submit it early, it's great. Once you finish this and you finish your last class, I'll get the questions up probably after Easter, you're going to be done with the course. So for those of you that like to work ahead, and I have a handful of you, go ahead, start reading about the assignment, and you might as well just start your project and feel free to submit it in that Dropbox. So that's up there, and it'll be due May 7th, 11 p.m. I love you all, but I cannot take any project that misses that deadline. There's no lates on that final project. It has to get in before that deadline. Okay, so for the next 2 weeks, you just have your short questions. You can go ahead and get started on your reading for the week of April 22nd, and if you want, go ahead and start your project. Submit your project when you feel that you're about finished. Also, for those that haven't picked up, I do have some papers I returned in your blue folders. They're outside my door. I will put my books outside my door for those who want to borrow them. All right, so based on that, let's just go ahead. Boy, my lighting is not good. And I just want to go over the important parts of Chapter 5. So I'll put it right back here for Chapter 5 in the Freeman book. And Chapter 5 talks about teaching should be meaningful and purposeful. This is super important, of course, in EAL teaching. You'll see this on your content-based test for New York State when you have to do short responses. In New York State, we'll want to hear and show examples of how do you make content meaningful? How is it purposeful? Well, you've learned in this chapter there's a lot of different aspects, but most importantly, one is it's student-centered. That if something's student-centered and students are working on it and they're creating that knowledge and they're working in pair shares and they're collaborating, that's more meaningful to them. It's better than top-down, teacher-centered. So we want to focus on student-centered learning. Also, we want students to be engaged with the content. So project-based learning is a great activity. You have students create their ideas and brainstorm and think about what they'd like to learn. When we do any type of book report, or you talk about literature you might want to share, you let students share ideas of their interest. Maybe there's a student who's interested in cooking, interested in puppies, and we use students' interest to drive our content, even though we still have to teach, within standards and within other content areas, students can still have some sense of control of their choice in the classroom. Also, we want to make sure the activities are engaging, and we do this through 2 ways. One, we think about learning styles, and you do remember, sorry, I know you can't see me. You do remember this from Gardner's Multiple Intelligences, and we want to modify our lesson plans to address students' different learning styles, those who are visual learners, those who are kinesthetic, those who are linguistic, they want to talk and chat. So if we vary our teaching and learning styles, our teaching styles to address those learning styles, then students will be more engaged. Also, differentiating our teaching to meet different proficiency levels. So maybe occasionally you do want to pair students who are lower level together. Maybe you want to mix those pairs, put a lower level with a higher level to make the experience more meaningful. By addressing proficiency levels, students are more engaged. You know, occasionally you might want to put all your Arabic students together, or Spanish speakers or Chinese speakers, and other times you might want to mix it up. So really being aware of students' linguistic backgrounds, proficiency levels, learning styles really helps make learning more meaningful. Also, a big aspect, and you're going to read it in the Selleck book next week, is pulling from students' cultural backgrounds. And EdTPA wants to see this. Your content-based test will want to see this. I want to see this in your student teaching. How do we really bring in our students' personal backgrounds? And we do this by having them talk about their own personal culture, their own personal experience. If you, in the example, talks about the butterfly and the life cycle of the butterfly, you might want to talk to students, you know, and when you're out playing outside in your own yard, what type of animals do you see? In your home country, if you were outside, what animals did you see? Oh, you weren't outside, you lived in an urban setting. Some students come from a super urban setting and they may have never seen grass. Well, when you were outside, would you see birds in the sky? Would you see leaves? And have them start talking about their own personal culture. If you're doing maybe project-based learning on foods, have students talk about their favorite foods from their home culture. What does your mom cook? Oh, your mom doesn't cook. Your sister cooks. Well, that's interesting. Then you're talking about your sister cooks. Do you help with cooking? What are your favorite foods? Could you tell us a little bit about what is lebni? You know, that sounds pretty good. When some students might not say, ooh, it's a beans. Well, all cultures eat beans. What kind of beans do you like in your culture? So this is what we mean when we talk about the students' cultural backgrounds. We want to make sure we validate and we don't ignore it. If you don't understand, you have no idea, don't be afraid to ask about it. Sometimes students, you know, we often see students don't wear a hijab until, you know, middle school. Then sometimes you might get a first grader who comes in with a hijab. Don't be afraid to say, hey, you know, when you're comfortable talking about it, would you share something? Or talk to the parent, and maybe the parent wants to share something about that. Never be afraid to draw on your students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Bring them into the classroom, celebrate it, draw pictures, talk about it, especially now because we're focusing on elementary students. Pictures are a big thing. Okay, and learning styles, actively engage, differentiate, personal interests, make it meaningful. Always let your students talk about pictures they share. If you have no idea what the picture is, and I just, here, hold on one second. Can you see this picture? There you go. So my son, Henry, who's 9, drew this picture. And I could see, you can see that there it is. Can you see the bird is eating chip? And then there's, I don't know if you can see it, there is an octopus next to him. And instead of saying, oh, what is this? I said, can you tell me about this picture? Can you tell me more? And really open-ended. And why did you put this? And who's this fellow? And tell me more. And remember, as students talk about it, you can write on the page or in a sticky note to help that language, to help remind you what the story says or what the picture is. And then to help the student see those words, you can write those words on the picture. That makes it more meaningful for the student because you're addressing it, you're talking about it, and you're sharing that experience of what he or she put on the paper. Okay, so I think chapter 5, those are the big things in chapter 5. You all read it. You did your assignment, so thank you. All right, how am I doing on time? Oh my gosh, I have 10 seconds. All right, that's it. I want to close in prayer. So we'll bow our heads, close in prayer. Miss you. Happy Easter. And